Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Good, and with me, as always, is my go-to podcast compadre, Joe Lieber. Joe.
Ciao. What's up, Jimmy?
Not much, man. How are you?
Doing great. Got
I'm
slow news week, but we got a bit to talk about, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking there are some things in there which just it leads me into the things we're going to talk about. But before we do that, I have to describe, what we're doing here. Obviously, for those who are new, we're talking about all the things in TV shows and movies and video games and all those news type things that are the most important things in your life. And if they aren't, they should be. And we're talking about them. The priorities, the bare necessities. Oh, man, every week comes back to Jungle Book. I gotta see that movie again.
Simple bare necessities.
We are not sponsored. We're not sponsored by Disney, but if someone from Disney hears this and wants to sponsor us, we'll talk about Disney stuff every week, which would be easy because it's Marvel and Star Wars, which we always talk about anyway. So, yes,
you're welcome, Disney.
You're welcome for the free publicity. You need it because your stuff is, it's fading. Nobody talks about it anymore. But before we get to all that, thank you again to Joran Evers, who did this really cool picture here. Joran, if you're hearing this, I hope you're doing well, pal. And this is Dale for our cool intro-outro song. But this week we're talking about a few different things. First off, we're going to get into a little bit of news, talking about Star Wars Star Wars Rogue One. There we go. Troubles. They're having some issues. Some rumors, potentially. Just a rumor. We're not sure. Then we're going to talk about Thor Ragnarok and its connection with the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the fact that it might kind of be the closest thing to a Planet Hulk film that we might ever get. And then we're going to go into X-Men Apocalypse. I saw it this past weekend. Joe did not, so I'm going to kind of talk about it. We're going to get a little spoilery. Joe, I don't think, cares as much. Do you, Joe, about X-Men?
I'm not too worried. I mean, I like X-Men, but sometimes I miss them and I see them later. I'll definitely see it. It's a busy weekend, man. Memorial Day weekend. I hope everybody had a good 3 days and, enjoyed your weekend with family and whatnot. But, couldn't get to the movie theater, unfortunately. But, let's get after it. I don't mind a spoiler or two. I'll still enjoy the movie.
Yeah, exactly. And for all of our international listeners who don't know what Memorial Day is, because I was explaining this to some other people, is that Memorial Day is a national holiday here in the States, remembering all the soldiers who, still are living, but mostly for the ones who have died either in battle or, they served and then died after. So that's just a day. That's kind of like the beginning of summer, if you will. And then the end of summer comes at Labor Day, which is in September. And that's kind of like for the people who are actively serving. So you kind of start with Memorial Day, end with Labor Day. Those are your kind of our like official quote unquote summer, like beginning and ending. So if you didn't know what that was and you're like, what are they talking about Memorial Day? But yeah, so there you go. Anyway, let's get right into it. Star Wars Rogue One. There have been some rumors, Joe. And I know we talked about it a little bit. I know you're not the biggest Star Wars fan, but we're getting you there.
I'm not on the up and up yet, man. Take it easy on me here.
I'm not gonna take it easy on you because I need to know your opinions from a guy who's on the outside looking in. But they've talked about they're doing some reshoots, and this is not uncommon. I want to say this right now. It is not uncommon for a big movie to do reshoots. Lots of people sign up. Like, the actors and everybody, they know this going in. It's not like, oh my gosh, they're doing reshoots. It's all, getting ruined or whatever. It's not that.
It's ruined.
Exactly. But for this particular one, it's interesting because it sounds like Disney didn't really like where this movie was going. And instead of kind of sitting back and letting the director decide where everything was going to go, Disney's stepping in. And it makes sense because Star Wars is, it's a huge property. And we've seen this done before. It kind of happened with Ant-Man. And I think it was was it somebody, Edgar Wright or somebody like that? He had a different vision for that movie and they kind of stepped in and Marvel did. And they're kind of like, all right, like your version might be kind of cool if it weren't like tied into this universe, but it needs to be a cohesive universe and we can't just, kind of go wherever we want with it.
Yeah, so they sprinkle in their special little additives to spice it up and tie it together with other recipes, am I right?
Yeah, definitely. They're either bolstering it or maybe they're, pulling it back a little bit if it gets a little too like weird, which with Star Wars I feel like that isn't as
big of a concern.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because like I feel like with the Marvel ones, if you kind of took just like one movie out of all of them and just made it like a weird kind of artsy type of film, like people would be like, okay, I don't know what was up with that movie. Like it seemed like it wasn't even in this universe at all. But so Disney kind of stepped in and they're doing that. They're doing some big reshoots, and they even, I know a few months ago too, they even had another writer who came in from, I think it was Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, came in and helped with the script and stuff. Or this was a while back, and they were saying that, you know, this movie has it's been going through some changes and stuff. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that The Force Awakens obviously did very well, even though I think, you know, we could talk about how very similar it is to A New Hope. And there's nothing wrong with that, but this is going to be the first Star Wars movie that we're getting from this kind of, this new Disney reign that'll be, you know, really different from anything else we've probably seen before. And I think that makes a lot of people nervous. And I think Disney knows it. And I think Disney's like, all right, you know, if we're not, you know, bringing episode 8 to theaters like they had planned, which was going to be May 2017, which was their original plan, but now they're doing it in December, which makes more sense to me. But the thought of that is that, you know, if this one does poorly in December and it's like, oh, it's just a few months until Star Wars Episode 8. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. So I think it's
so Rogue One is set to come out when?
It's coming out this December.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Episode 8 is following it?
It's coming out the December after that. It's kind of like how Lord of the Rings used to do it, Joe.
So every initially, December the new installments are released. Yeah, all right.
And I remember saying that a while ago, and I was wrong. And they're like, oh no, and then like it'll be 5 months later when the Episode 8 comes out. And I remember thinking like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? And then they pushed it back to like December. I'm like, see, that's smart. Do one every year, because you don't want to overdo on like 1 year and then like wait 3 years or 2 years and then be like, all right, now here are another 2. Like just do it one a year. That's fine. Don't overdo it.
Take your time. Do it right. You know,
yeah, exactly.
You know, whet their palates and get them all happy, and then leave them starving, wanting more.
Yeah, exactly. So my question to you, Joe, for someone who's outside looking in, is that kind of like the Suicide Squad, which again, people are like, you know, the rumor mill is going crazy about how they are adding more comedy and doing all this stuff and doing these massive reshoots, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to say that like Will Smith and Margot Robbie were just available anytime to do reshoots. So obviously they're probably planned in advance quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And whereas that movie, they're, you know, Batman vs Superman, DC and all that, they might be kind of scrambling to change it a little bit so that people don't kind of go after it as critically as they did with Batman vs Superman. This is kind of like the opposite, where Force Awakens did so well and was loved by kind of critics and audiences alike, where they were so worried that they didn't want to follow it up with something that was kind of less than. So what do you think about all this kind of crazy reshoot thing? Do you think this is like, you know, something like a concern, or is this something that's good? How do you feel about all of it?
Frankly, Jimmy, even in the DC universe, you know, Star Wars, I feel people tend to overanalyze this stuff. This stuff happens, like you kind of said it. It happens all the time. These production companies, Disney, whatever, they always have to have their hands in it. They always reanalyze it once they kind of get to that final cut stage. There you go, reshoots. You know, we got to do this, but you know, we got to make sure that we're not, you know, underperforming as opposed to the first one that came out. We need to you know, maintain that level of intensity in these movies, and they can't fluctuate too much. Yeah, better is good, but they don't want to outdo themselves either, so as they can't top it the next time. So
that's
there's a fine line, good balance there, and I think it's well thought out by Disney. I mean, yeah, going back to the drawing board on a couple scenes and that sort of thing. That's good. That just goes to show their attention to detail and making sure that they give the audience what they want, and just ultimately making your dollars that you spend at the movie theater worth it. And I love that. I think that's good. And then, you know, on the DC side of things, you know, kind of comparing it to that, well, let's face it, Star Wars has a bigger following than any franchise ever in the history of franchises.
Yeah, very true.
So I don't know if you can necessarily compare it, but even to Marvel, for that matter, although Marvel's pretty big and growing, DC, yeah, they're kind of lagging behind. They're trying, it's the race of the horses, and you got DC Crumpet way in the back trying to catch up, on the final stretch, and they'll get it figured out. There's some smart people in those production companies that minds behind it, and they'll work it out. The thing that I hate is that all these different franchises are always compared to one another. They're different things. Take them for what they are and try and enjoy them is a different take on maybe a similar subject. Superheroes, supervillains, okay, yeah, whatever. It's a bit of a different take, and I'm more open-minded to those sort of things. I'm glad that they're going back and doing some reshoots and, paying attention to detail. So, I'm excited to see what comes with all that stuff. But, when I hear, they're doing some reshoots or, Disney's getting their fingers in there and, adding some ingredients to spice up the recipe, that's good. And that's what they're supposed to do. So I don't, red alarms aren't going off in my head. I'm like, okay, yeah, good deal. Right. They're, putting some much needed attention into it, as they should. So, it's just expected for me. It doesn't really come as a surprise, and I'm happy that they do it. And it just seems like standard operating procedure to me. A director that they hire on is always going to have that, well, in college they taught me to be artistic, and I thought if we did this with this lady and he kisses her, yeah, okay, yeah, it's all good and dandy, but I mean, you still got to tie it in with the franchise. You got to, a little nod here, an Easter egg there. I mean, that sort of stuff is needed. So it's good that these, the overriding companies kind of get in there and mix things up a bit and, essentially just make the movie even better. I don't think they're ruining what the director's trying to do by any means. Maybe the directors don't like it so much. I'd like to get their take on it, what they think of, they're coming in, they're mixing up, my thoughts and what I had planned out, but it needs to be done. These production companies ultimately have the broader scope in mind, the future. They have things planned out down the road of where they want things to go and how they want to end up, and it has to be done. It's a must do. So
yeah, those are good points.
My take on it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm sorry. I will always compare these things, and the only reason I will say I'll compare it, this is kind of just like comparing reshoots, but when you talk about like Marvel versus DC or anything, that's obviously like our comic rivalry that's gone back years and years, and yeah. I hope that I don't want necessarily DC to follow the same thing, kind of going on tangent here, but I want both of them to do really well. I want all of these things to do really well because obviously they're marketed to make money. All of it's a cash grab. I think you have to just remember that everything that we love, all this stuff is like to get money from us. Yeah. And it sounds kind of sad when you put it that way, but you also want them to be all very competitive with one another because that'll hopefully kind of up the other one's game
it ups the
a little
ante,
bit,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
And the thing with Star Wars is that Star Wars right now is facing itself. You got the prequels, which most people really didn't like.
Jimmy, they're Star Trek, right?
I was gonna say they're Star Trek, and they're doing the movie. And there's a lot of diehard fans out there. If you like Star Trek, that's fine.
I mean, yeah, Star Trek's great. Yeah.
Well, I never got into the show, and I actually kind of like the movies. But if you were a Star Trek fan, I've heard a lot of those people don't really like the movies at all, because they're kind of too actiony. Which I think Star Trek has action, but it's typically more methodical and more of kind of like, we're just discovering. They're like the Fantastic Four of like the kind of like sci-fi world. They're just like discovering places. They're not really the best fighters all the time, even though the Fantastic Four could definitely throw down. But
I mean,
with Star Wars,
they're whatever to me. I mean, I don't go out of my way to see them by any means.
The Star Trek stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird because if the prequels, like I said, they weren't that great, and technically Rogue One is a prequel. And if they do really poorly after Force Awakens, I think the worry is that they're like, oh man, all they can do is remake that old script, and this one was kind of a fluke, and like now they just kind of like these standalones, which are going to kind of come out every other year besides the Star Wars episodes. People are going to be less keen to see those, and I'm hoping that Rogue One does very well, because I think out of all the ones they've talked about doing standalones for right now, that's the most fascinating to me. Seeing potentially like Darth Vader in his prime
Mm-hmm.
is something we have not gotten to see in a movie before.
Yeah.
As far as like showing it technically, because we've seen him, do all right, but we've never seen him like, pull down an entire building. Like the guy is like pretty unstoppable. And it's just, that's the kind of stuff I want to see. I want to see more of that stuff and see the Death Star and all that Imperial stuff is, it's interesting to me. So I hope it does well. Either way, it's still going to make insane money, regardless if it's bad. What I'm guessing right now is people be like, it's not as good as Force Awakens, but it's still pretty good. It's going to be one of those like pizza arguments where they say even bad pizza is still like good pizza, is my guess.
Oh, I don't know. You put anchovies on there, it's freaking ruined.
I hope it does well, though. And, Joe, we've talked about Rogue One a little bit, but are you excited at all for Rogue One? Is there after Force Awakens and all that stuff, do you excited to see that?
Yeah. I mean, just as a point of reference, people, I've only seen... I don't even know how the timeline works on these. I understand that Rogue One kind of throws it back to, it's a prequel, kind of historical, before The Force Awakens and everything. Okay, cool. And I really love The Force Awakens, but as a point of reference, I had only seen part of one of the originals from the 80s, 70s? Jimmy?
Which... Yeah, so
like I don't
77?
know. Darth Maul fighting somebody up on this high walkway, and somebody loses something and falls.
That's episode 1, and that was from 2000 or 1999 or 2000 or something like that.
Oh, so that's pretty recent. My bad, people.
Have you seen any of the originals, Joe? You've seen bits and pieces.
Not really.
I'm glad I didn't ask you like something very specific, like Star Wars wise, because we're talking in general terms.
Yeah, you would
here,
have heard crickets.
Yeah, that's okay. But are you excited to see this at all? Or are you just kind of like...
Super excited. First of all, the technology has come so far in the past few years that The Force Awakens, awesome. Really cool. Sparked my interest, and yeah, whatever. I wanted to go back, see some of the older ones, but hey man, time is hard to come by these days. Anyhow, after seeing that, I think it's cool that they're throwing it back. I'm excited for Darth Vader. I mean, when you think of Star Wars, what do you think of? Darth frickin' Vader, right? So seeing him in his prime, awesome, great. I like a female lead. Everything I saw from the trailer really, sparks my interest, and I will definitely be going to see that. And it's surprising because I've never been in the Star Wars too much. I've seen minimal amounts of the earlier ones, but my girlfriend, she's seen them all. like her dad forced his family to watch them all, so she's seen them, and so she'll probably force me to go see this one. So not that I need to be forced, but I'm excited. I mean, the trailer does it justice and gets you excited for it. It's pretty intense. So, and if The Force Awakens was any foreshadowing of what we'll see, I think it'll be great. So
cool. Well, I'm glad that you feel that way, even though you're not a huge Star Wars fan. Not yet.
But I want more reshoots. The more reshoots, the better. I love reshoots.
Don't. Oh no, Joe's positive on reshoots. Joe, I've always dreamed that you and I would just end up being like directors. And like that's probably not something we would go in if we're trying to like get a job.
Let me lay it out for you, people. All right. So Jimmy and I are in the boardroom. We're watching the final cut on the projection screen. We're sitting there. Oh, okay. Movie ends. Finn. Jimmy looks across the table. Well, what do you think, Joe? That looks pretty good. I think we can go to theaters with this one. Reshoots, Jimmy. Reshoots.
It's just stand up, just like your movie. I show him a
notepad just with bullet points, 2 pages.
Be like, why should we hire you guys in the first place to direct this movie? And you're like, I'm a big believer in reshoots. And they're like, wait, what? And you're like, everybody makes mistakes, guys. You just gotta get ready for reshoots. I just want like 20 weeks of reshoots. It's like, what?
We've got the budget for that, right, guys?
Yeah, exactly.
Where are the accountants? They work that in, right?
That's another thing they're talking about with this is that these Rogue One ones will be expensive. But it's hard for me to like think that it really is expensive because you think like, okay, how much did Star Wars Force Awakens make? Like crazy money, like over $1 billion, I'm sure. And it's just like, okay, you're just putting pennies down on the dollar. There you go, or something like that. You know,
it's like throwing change in a bucket. You know,
exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah,
so
it's a drop in the bucket.
But you know, these companies, I mean, they've estimated this stuff down to the dollar. So they know what they're wanting to make, and they know what they're spending as well. You know, just being in the construction industry, I know what goes into the estimating just to build one commercial building. So I can only imagine, you know, the amount of estimating and financial analysis that goes into a freaking movie production. So,
and they probably build like 3 commercial buildings for every one of these movies and then blow them up, and they're like, we probably should have saved those buildings. And they're like, it's okay, we got money for it, let's just build some
and
more.
Project managers everywhere tear up.
Hey, no, that keeps them in business.
That's true. Yeah, better than the alternative. I want to stay
exactly
busy, right?
They'd just be alien extras in the Star Wars worlds. They'd be like, I'll just put on a costume, it doesn't matter now. But yeah, so either way, hopefully Star Wars Rogue One will be just fine. I'm sure it will be. Disney completely has shown that they know what they're doing, especially juggling not only the franchises that they've had for many, many years now, but also Marvel and now Star Wars. It's really quite a crazy thing, which always like makes me feel like my dream, my end game should really be like CEO of Disney. Because think of that, like at any time, you know, I could just say like, yeah, I'm gonna go visit the Star Wars set today. I want to see a rough cut. Like, I want to go see a rough cut.
Everybody on set. Everybody look busy. The CEO's coming. Mr. Good's here.
I would demand that someone is in a Mickey Mouse costume follow me around all the time. And then I would have him kind of go up and whisper things to people if they weren't doing their job. I'd be like, hey, Mick, go fire that guy. You better get out of here.
Mr. Good says you're fired.
You got 5 minutes to get out of here, otherwise it's not going to be good. Just kind of skips away. Oh, man. With the moving mouth that they have on those guys now, it'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, Mick, take this down for me. Cancel all my appointments for this afternoon. Drinks with that girl.
I was going to say, or I'd just be like, you know what? Fire the guy who's playing this new superhero. I'm going to be the new guy who's that superhero. Like, sir,
if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. Am I right?
Exactly. Huh? I'm going to be the new Spider-Man. They're like, sir, you're like 55 years old. I'm like, I can do a backflip.
All my own stunts. I demand it.
Get out of my way. By the way, am not 55 years old. We're jumping into the future with this. I assume if I was a CEO, I'd have to climb for a bit. All right, people? Just continuity issues.
It takes time.
Anyway, we're moving on. Star Wars Rogue One. There it is. Next thing I want to talk about, next piece of news, kind of a little bit older, might still be kind of newish, but Thor Ragnarok is coming out in 2017. I think it's November. But so we're hearing a lot of things about that movie, and this movie, you know, for me, thinking about the other Thor movies, is that they never felt overstuffed in any way. There wasn't like a lot going on. Usually Thor stuff was even more disconnected than like the Iron Man standalones or the Captain standalones, Captain America ones.
Agreed.
But with Civil War, they kind of proved that you could still do kind of like an Avengers 2.5 within a standalone quote unquote movie. And with that, I think they're kind of doubling down on Thor Ragnarok to not only be a Thor movie, but to also be kind of a setup for the Infinity Wars and a pseudo Planet Hulk movie.
Yeah, so I have not seen anything to kind of, you know, illustrate that Hulk may be, or insinuate that Hulk may be involved. I'm interested to hear where you come up with that, but exciting nonetheless.
Yeah, so I think there have been confirmed reports of Ruffalo being attached to this film, which would obviously mean that he is, going to be Hulk and Banner at sometimes. Probably Hulk for most of the time. Maybe Banner when they're kind of like not fighting, but I imagine there'd be a lot of it. And Hulk's the only Avenger, when you really think about it, who could probably go to an Asgardian realm and kind of last a while. Because like everybody else would probably be dead pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. There's some really powerful stuff out there. But for the stuff on that, Joe, a while ago, they kind of leaked something about it being like a cosmic road trip, if you will, with like Thor and Hulk, because neither of them, spoiler alert, were in Civil War. They were only mentioned. And, I will quote this line kind of that Thunderbolt Ross says is like, have you seen Thor or Banner? He's like, if I misplaced a few 30-ton nukes, there'd be consequences. And they're kind of talking about the whole registration. And that's kind of true.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
But with Hulk, they like I was telling you before too, Joe, is that unfortunately Hulk can't do any standalone movies right now, or at least Disney can't, because his distribution rights are tied up with some sort of legal dealings with Universal. It gets really confusing, and I've been thinking about doing a video on it for a long time, because people like to ask me a lot, like, Jimmy, like, why isn't Spider-Man, like, why wasn't he in the Avengers for a while? Or, like, where are the X-Men? Why can't they be there? And it's really fascinating, actually, to hear about, like, who owns the rights to all this stuff.
Big money.
And one of my... Yeah, exactly. Big money. And one of my favorite little distribution rights, I'll drop a little tidbit here, is that if you go to Orlando, you go to Universal down there, you can see, like, all, like, the Marvel characters. They have Marvel rides. You see, like, Wolverine and Captain America and Spider-Man, all that stuff. And it's nuts, because you're like, wait, doesn't Disney own that? So there's this kind of deal that they did a long time ago, is that Universal got theme park rights to all those characters east of the Mississippi. But if you go to Disneyland, you can go see, like, Thor in, like, the throne room at Disneyland, of, like, Odin's throne room, and it's, like, all this crazy cool stuff, and it's, like, really well done, and it's just, like, Disney, you should get those rights somehow, man, because that would look so good in one of your parks, like, some crazy, like, Avengers stuff. But anyway, so Hulk's probably going to be there, and for anyone who isn't really familiar with Planet Hulk, I'll give you, like, just a little brief synopsis, but basically, Hulk kind of goes, on one of his rampages, and there's this group called the Illuminati, which has a few key members in it, and sometimes they change, I don't remember if it's always the same, but it's usually like Professor Xavier, Doctor Strange, Tony Stark, Black Panther, I think Black Bolt from the Inhumans, and maybe some others that I'm forgetting, maybe Namor, but they're like this group of, like, the most intelligent and just kind of like the leaders of all the Marvel teams, and they kind of have this, like, kind of secret group that kind of does stuff if they have to. So the Illuminati puts Banner in a ship, and they blast him off into space, because they're like, all right, we can't have Hulk on the planet anymore. Like, he's got to get out of here. Crash lands on another planet called Sakaarn. There's like a gladiatorial arena where they fight there, and Hulk has to kind of win his way to the top. He ends up winning all the gladiatorial arena matches. Shocker there. And he's kind of beloved there. He kind of falls in love. He has a child. It's a pretty good place for Hulk to be. He's always Hulk. And he's talking and stuff, and it's not like he's just like, me Hulk, me strongest, blah, blah, blah. One day, unfortunately, the ship that he landed on, that had crashed a long time ago, it explodes, killing his wife and his child. Hulk gets really angry about this, thinking that the Illuminati and everybody did this to him, so he gathers up some of his buddies, if you will, whose name I'm forgetting. They have a cool, like, group name. Heads back to Earth, starts fighting all of the heroes. He goes he just, like, wants to kill everybody. And then he even pits them against each other in an arena type match, like on Sakaarn. Super duper good. That's World War Hulk, getting to that when he goes back to Earth. But for this movie, they've talked about it kind of being like Thor dealing with all the events of Ragnarok, but also having Hulk be there and them being in kind of a gladiatorial arena, which we could even see Beta Ray Bill, if anybody knows who that is. But I don't know, Joe, what do you think about this? This movie's starting to sound like not just like, a small Thor type thing, but it sounds like there's going to be a lot more to it.
Well, I'm interested to see how Hulk is involved. Is he on a separate planet from Thor? Is he on Thor's planet helping him fight? Who's coming in? You got that Surtur.
Yeah, Surtur, I'm thinking is going to be it, and it'll be in the realm of Asgard, I'm sure. They might go to another realm or two, but I'm sure they'll be together for the most part.
Okay, so kind of Hulk with the assist, I guess?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what we're
I think
kind of looking at here.
Probably like a crony at times, it might look like, like he's kind of like following Thor around, but is kind of the really the
so
big
and
man.
then the possibility of Thanos in this movie is what I'm hearing, or people are hoping for. I seeing Hulk in a conflict with some of these more super beings. Heck yeah, man, I'm all for that. And who doesn't love Hulk? I mean, watching him beast out on something that seems unimaginably, fightable, unfightable, if that's a word.
Yes, we'll take it. We'll accept it.
Yeah, I guess seeing more of that, I'm all for it, and sounds like this movie is going to be pretty devastating and dark, right up my alley, that's me. But I hope they bring Thor into a much bigger light, bigger spotlight, so to speak. his previous standalones were kind of lackluster for me, and I was kind of like, whatever, but so I really hope they hit it home with this one and go big or go home,
Yeah, definitely.
So,
and I think
I'm hoping for that, because I really do like Thor. I think he's an awesome character, and the fact that they can bring this multi-dimensional
multi-realm
realm the fact that they can tie all that in with a more grounded storyline with the Avengers and everybody on Earth, that the fact that they can tie that in is awesome, just flat out amazing. And from what I'm hearing through reviews and leaks and people with their what they want to see online, I'm excited for it, and I can't. It just kind of makes the impact a little bigger that they're tying all this together, and it's like, holy crap, they're really putting something together here, and it kind of amazes me. There's the minds behind that; they must be going a mile a minute. Let me tell you. I don't know how they keep
definitely.
track of all those relationships and how these things relate to each other.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another point that'll be really fun to see is that besides Thor and Iron Man and the Hulkbuster armor, we haven't really seen Hulk go up against someone, especially like a villain, that he is having a hard time fighting physically. I mean, we had the Chitauri in the first one with Loki, which weren't anything for him. Then you have Ultron, which we didn't really get to see like a straight up fight between them. He kind of rips him out of a plane and throws him out, and it's not that big of a deal. He just kind of crushes the other Ultron robots. But it'd be nice to see him, punch a villain that could take a punch and then come back and like hit him back, and them to have kind of a scrum, if you will. Because that's something we haven't really seen yet with any bad guys. It's mostly just the good guys that he's fought. So it'd be nice to see him especially go all out, even more so on someone that he just hated. He's like, I'm just going to kill you. Like, he just rips someone apart. Probably won't do that, but here's hoping.
Come on, make it rated R. Rated
R.
Oh
my gosh. Oh my gosh, that'd be bad.
So, I saw some people, nodding towards, okay, Surtur. I want to see a badass guy. I mean, he's huge, right? Skyscraper scale.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if
how they deal with that, but okay.
Maybe they'll do that for the beginning, Joe. Like, he's like that, or sometimes. And then other times when he wants to like straight up fight someone, maybe he would shrink down to like humanoid and still be that powerful. I don't know if he can do that type of thing, but I could see them doing it so it looks better on screen.
Yeah, make it a little more realistic. That's fine with me. Or like the size of that. What's that guy? He's like that metallic Reaper type guy they send to Earth when Thor's in.
You're talking about the Destroyer.
Yeah, the Destroyer. Something to that scale, maybe a little bigger.
Yeah, sure.
Although I want him to be like gnarly and scary and the most ominous looking bad mother trucker you've ever seen.
Sure.
So when I saw nods to that and him possibly being featured, I was like, yeah, go all out, boys and girls. So I'm hopeful for that one, and also very interested about it. Now, also Kronos, if somehow he's involved with like towards the end of the movie, because obviously he has a bigger part to play in this entire.
You're talking about Thanos, right?
Thanos. Who's Kronos?
Depends on where you're looking. I know him as a Titan from like God of War and stuff.
Why
Kronos.
am I...
Also,
these names, Jimmy, they're so confusing.
There's also a Kronos in DC's Legends of Tomorrow. He's the bounty hunter.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone.
That's okay. We're working it out. He might have been in Smallville too, or somebody like that. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of names get thrown around in this head of mine.
Thanos. Anywho, we're talking about Thanos.
So Thanos, yeah, bigger part to play in the entire franchise storyline, etc. But to have him featured in this with a little, tidbit, that'd be awesome. Not only does that tie in the Guardians of the Galaxy a bit more, I just think he's a cool character, and I want to see him do something that shows his power.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm hoping for that. But yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts on it, Jimmy?
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think? Do you think it'll be the very end scene that we see, like, boots on the ground on that kind of the Bifrost bridge with Thanos? Like, he'll land there and he'll just show him walking towards Asgard. Is that an after credits scene? where they show him just like just marching straight towards it. And the beginning of Infinity War, like the first scene is him just like destroying everything. And he's like, I've come for the Tesseract. He's like, give it to me and I'll kill you all mercifully. If you don't, murder every last one of you. Is that the kind of thing that we're thinking? Because that's what I feel like is going to happen.
Yeah, something of that nature. Although I'm interested to see, they've already got a very powerful villain featured in here, or supposedly featured, Surtur. I like the idea of him as a villain. I've never heard of him because I'm not that familiar with that universe, part of the universe. But, I don't want him to feature two super powerful villains over I don't want them both to be like overly featured. I want either one or the other. So obviously I think Surtur should be the main go-to villain, and then Thanos kind of featured is kind of like a teaser almost. So like you're saying, I think that's a good way to go about it, because obviously down the line he's going to play a big part. So just a little wetting of the palate, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. I also think that we're going to have like kind of a side villain in Loki, obviously, because if you recall in the end of Thor the Dark World, spoilers for that right now, but Loki ends up imitating his father, well, adopted father, Odin, and he is technically the guy running Asgard last time we saw. So that's got to either come to a head. It's either going to they're either going to end up, Loki's story is going to be all done, or maybe this is just the beginning. And I only say that because of how much people really love him.
Exactly.
And people really, and he, you look at the guy and you're like, man, you are like the best possible
Loki.
You are the embodiment
of that character.
Which I'll say this about probably 99% of all the people that they've cast for these roles are just like spot on.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I mean, especially when you look at like Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr., it's like, who else would you pick as Captain America and like Tony Stark? They're perfect. Like, I couldn't, they're like, all right, Jimmy, can you dream up somebody who would, fulfill these roles? I'm like, yeah, that'd be them. Like, I'm just like, perfect. You did it. Good job.
Yeah, no complaints out of me either. I will say that Disney has done an amazing job with the casting for these movies, in this franchise.
And technically, I guess some of that was Paramount before them, because like I think Thor but anyway, they continued on with it, and they're just like, all right, here we go. Like we're keeping on with this.
So yeah, even back to the origins, the choices were A++. But yeah, sometimes I feel like Loki is even more beloved than Thor. I mean,
for sure.
He's an enjoyable character and kind of, I don't know, puts a little smile on your face every time he's featured just because of his witty banter and his just his presence. I think is really good, and Tom Hiddleston, he hits it home every time. So
yeah, well, and the other thing about Loki is kind of this Magneto, thing too. Why I love Magneto so much is that not only is he kind of a fun villain, and you kind of sometimes like to root for the bad guy. You're kind of like, oh yeah, you do it. And not only that, but he's very empathetic. You kind of get his backstory, and for Loki, he's kind of had a rough go because not only has he always played second fiddle to Thor, but kind of realizing that he's not even, part of the Asgardians, and he's kind of a frost giant, It's kind of like just another slap in the face. It's just like, you know what, I just can never catch a break. I'll never be better than him. I'll never be better than Thor. And the only way to do it is to kind of like skirt around the side and do something kind of underhanded, which is fun to see because, at the same time, you're like, he does good things once in a while. So he's kind of an anti-hero sometimes, but he's also just in it for himself. Like, there's never a moment where you're thinking like, he did that. It was such a nice thing for him to do. And if you do think that, that's right where Loki wants you. He wants you thinking, yeah, good thing we got him on the team. So he might team up with Surtur. That's probably what's going to happen. But yeah, with Thanos, I say, save it for the very last thing you show. Don't show him killing anybody. Just show him marching straight towards Asgard. And that's how Infinity War Part 1 opens. And with the Russo brothers helming the Infinity War stuff after Civil War and Winter Soldier, I have the utmost faith. Like, I don't think they can screw this up.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the fights. Like, I bet the fights are going to be so insane, Joe. We're going to see fights from, like, people like Thanos and Hulk and Thor that we haven't seen yet because those guys, they nail the fighting. I don't know who's doing it over there, like, who's coordinating and the feel of each blow. It just, oh, man. It's too good. It's so good. Like drop kicking people. Oh,
and
man.
They better do it. I mean, I guess confidence is at an all-time high, especially after Civil War. I I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of CG in this one for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean,
yeah,
they've got ample time to do it. So I hope they really do a really, really, really good job.
Well, one thing I appreciated about Thor, the first one, that I kind of think on, I don't think the Dark World did it as much, but when you went to Asgard, a lot of especially like the armor and a lot of the stuff that people were wearing were like legitimate and real.
Yeah.
So that really helps. I think if you can, do CGI when you have to for fights and things, but use it sparingly. And with Asgard, yeah, you can do the kind of big pan out shot where it's like, oh, all of Asgard, they're not going to build. The biggest thing they could do is make like a model, kind of like what Lord of the Rings used to do, and make like a 1/100th model or whatever it is, and kind of pan around that. But I understand they'll do that CGI. That's fine.
That's fine, yeah. And they've done a good job in the past, so I'm not too worried about that. And like we said, I mean, there's still room for practical effects in this movie. So
oh my gosh, there's definitely still room.
As you can, that the fact that it's a real physical object and it's present, you can sense that in a film. So I hope they utilize it where they can. So.
Yes, which is an excellent point that ties into the thing that we're really going to talk about today. We won't talk about too much because Joe hasn't seen it, but X-Men and the fact that they're using a lot of CGI and unfortunately did use it quite a bit on their heroes, which is very jarring when you see someone like Olivia Munn switch into CGI Olivia Munn, and you can tell that the movements are off, and it's just very jarring. But yes, we're going into X-Men now. X-Men Apocalypse. This is your spoiler warning for X-Men. I'm putting my hands in the air, field goal style, or / gymnast, sticking it, landing style. But we're going to talk about this just a little bit, because like I said before, Joe hasn't seen it. So I'll just give you a little... Dang it, Joe. You're blowing out the mics over here.
Oh, that one hurt my heart a little.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know if I don't think I'll even warn people about that. They'll just have to... Joe's dying over there. He's allergic.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure people are awake. You guys awake in there?
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so X-Men Apocalypse, hot off the heels of Days of Future Past a few years back, we've got the crew coming back, fighting against the very first mutant, apparently, of all time. And kind of some mutants join up with him, some mutants don't, obviously. He wants to kind of cleanse the world of all humanity. That's pretty much what it is. That's my synopsis of it. But, if you haven't, I also did a review for it, so you can go check that out. That's spoiler free over on the YouTube channel, or here on the YouTube channel if you're watching it. But I don't know, Joe. What I said in my review about this movie is that after watching it, it didn't make me hungry like Civil War did. Like, after I saw Civil War, I wanted to see it again, right away.
Yeah.
With this movie, I was like, okay, I could see it again. I probably won't go out of my way to see it, but if someone's like, yeah, we should go see this, I'll be like, all right. And it's mostly because of my intense love for Magneto and Michael Fassbender's portrayal of Magneto, because we don't have Ian McKellen. Probably, I wonder, he might never do it again, but Michael Fassbender does a great job. And I love seeing Magneto do his thing. And by do his thing, I mean pretty much anything, because it's so good. The sound is always so cool. It makes this metallic warping noise, and even if it's just something little, if he's just moving a small object around and he's just ripping people apart with that, or if he's just throwing tons of debris that you just can't even understand how he could throw that much, that's the type of stuff I love. And the fact that he's just a cool, complex, and empathetic character just makes me sad that you can't see him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I think him being in there would be a great boon for them, because he's probably the best villain that Marvel has, out of all of them for me, because he's so very powerful, but he's also very empathetic, and you kind of get it. You get why he's doing this stuff. I mean, the guy's been persecuted his whole life, and he grew up being, a slave, basically, a Jewish slave back in Auschwitz. And then once he got out of there, he had to compete, or contend with the fact that he was a mutant, and again, he was being segregated, and there's prejudice against him, kind of being hunted, even though he's probably one of the most powerful people you'd ever meet. And he didn't want this. He's never been angry at humanity. He wasn't before, but now he is. And it's understandable, because you're well, this poor guy's been through the ringer. He just can't catch a break. And they do kind of some cliched stuff in this one again. He kind of loses a new family that he started, and you're kind of Magneto can never catch a break, kind of thing. But it's cool to see him again. I don't like seeing him play second fiddle to someone like Apocalypse. I don't like that kind of whole thing. I like seeing him as the main bad guy, but he does all right. The other Horseman, which I know Joe's favorite, has to be Olivia Munn. Right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Joe, what do you think of that outfit?
But she's just a pretty lady, just saying.
Just a pretty lady. You're quiet over there, Joe. Are you reserving all of your real thoughts on Olivia Munn?
I was curious about her more so because of the character she was playing. I thought the character was cool, and I don't know much about Psylocke. In all honesty, I was just interested to see what her abilities were and how she functioned throughout the plot. What her role was, and obviously she's one of the Horsemen. But I think I'm more just interested to see, what her abilities are and what she can do to really mess up people. She was just kind of sparked my interest more than anything. So,
well, I'm sorry to say she's kind of limited to one ability in this movie, Joe. I'm sorry to tell you that.
Well,
it's basically
it for me. What do we got?
It's just that energy blade that you see. That's all she's got. She has that. She dual wields it with. She has like a katana that she uses as well in her other hand.
And
that's it.
That's it. So
that's
she just stabs the hell out of people.
Yep, or tries to. She has a fight with Beast that doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I kind of saw something on that.
And then when her powers get boosted, the beam gets a bit longer. Like her blade gets a bit longer. Because Apocalypse can boost your powers. And that's what she gets, is like an amped up beam sword thing.
That's it?
That's it, man. That's it.
Oh, man.
I think Psylocke is able to like shoot projectiles typically and do all this other stuff. And I didn't see that in this movie.
Well, that's lame. I might be let down by this movie when I see it.
Yeah, I wanted to warn you. The other thing, and I've gotten this from a few people, which is kind of interesting, is that, Jennifer Lawrence obviously was in First Class. She was in Days of Future Past. She was heavily featured in Days of Future Past. And again, in this one, one thing that people complain about a lot is that now, Mystique in the old movies, first off, she's never been like a main player. It's just kind of star power that's allowed Mystique, if you will, to become like the leader of the X-Men from time to time.
Yeah.
But in this movie especially, she is just Jennifer Lawrence. Like, she looks just like Jennifer Lawrence. Like, I mean, they do the blue every once in a while, but they don't do it a lot. Or maybe it's just she has so much screen time that you don't really think about it as much. In the older ones, when she kind of shows up once in a while and is blue and switches out. But she doesn't do a lot of transforming in this one. A lot of people were saying, like, Mystique used to kind of be this, side villain. She kind of worked for Magneto. And she would, she's either blue or she's, looking like somebody else to trick him. And that's very true. But in this one, she's kind of like, I'm blue and I'm leading you guys. And if I'm not that, I just look like, Jennifer Lawrence showed up for work that day, and that's just who she is. So I don't know. How do you feel about that, Joe? How do you feel about Mystique's prominence now in these films?
Well, I mean, I think that's fine, and she's been a mainstay throughout the series. I'd like to see her, show off her abilities a lot more. And from what you're saying, you don't see a lot of that in this one, which is unfortunate because it's a cool power. I mean, think about what she could do. She could, throw off the enemy by pretending to be one of them. I mean, the information you could get, you can make them out to be fools, really. And
she does a few moments like that. But the thing is, with this particular villain, and this is what happens as X-Men gets into bigger and bigger foes, is that she isn't very good against anybody, besides like kind of like human level mutants, or there's some mutants I guess she can go up against, but for the most part, if you attack Apocalypse head on, it's just not.
What does she have? A little bit of karate skills?
Yeah, it's weird because I just watched Days of Future Past the other day, and they've never really explained this. There might be something, someone can correct me, but and in the old X-Men movies she used to do too, she could like slide on the ground.
Yeah,
a lot. I never understood that. And I was like, that's fine. I'm just like, maybe her scales allow her to slide along.
Yeah,
people were saying
slippery,
maybe it's
like a snake.
She's slippery, or like she's got like octopus suction cups pulling her across the ground. I forgot where I heard that.
I don't think that's accurate.
It's from Mr. Sunday Movies and Wikipedia Brown. They were joking about. I was like, that's pretty funny. But so it's, I don't know. It feels like with Mystique, and then a little bit, I'm a tangent a little bit, into like Black Widow, that both of these characters are kind of auxiliary characters. They're usually more like support types, and because of the the star power behind Jennifer Lawrence and Scarlett Johansson, that they've become these kind of like main players. And I'm not saying that they can't be. It's just that personally I would like to see more of like the superpowered females that are on these teams too, because Black Widow technically I don't think has any powers. In some versions she has like a kind of a crummy super soldier serum, and Mystique's got a cool power, but it's usually best utilized when you can really trick somebody, or someone you could potentially kill someone without them realizing.
Yeah, it's a little more grounded on a human level, right? And it's good for like infiltrating, the enemy. Basically, I just fooling people. It's just
exactly.
Kind of a trick, basically. It's a cool power and can be useful on a more grounded human level in a lot of ways, but not on an epic, more global scale and fighting, these ultra powerful foes. So
yeah, and I don't want people to think I'm like some sexist person, but I think that's a critique of anybody. It's like if they started like making Hawkeye like the biggest thing ever. It's like Hawkeye's fine, but I don't really want to see like a standalone movie of just Hawkeye. I think he's really good in an ensemble type of thing.
It could be cool, but it doesn't really stand up to par with something of Iron Man or somebody with that more powerful presence. Hawkeye's great in his own right, but it would be a totally different style movie, a little more intimate, I guess you would say, and close quarters and that sort of thing. More of like a 007 style movie, I guess, is what I picture. But
just watch Bourne Legacy with Jeremy Renner and just call it Hawkeye.
There you go.
That's all you got to do. But with the Black Widow getting her standalone movie now, I don't think they'll ever make like a Mystique standalone movie, because Jennifer Lawrence, even though apparently she's been saying like she'd love it and she'd love to come back and do it again, a lot of people said her performance was a little phoned in with this one, and that she wasn't really excited about. She doesn't really like to wear the blue, which I completely understand. Like not only
what is that?
I guess
you have to do makeup a full day ahead of time. It's like 12 hours
like
in the
that.
trailer, probably.
Well, apparently they're doing like something different now, where it's kind of like a bodysuit, like a skin type bodysuit.
Yeah,
and then they kind of do like the head up and some stuff like that. So it's not as intense as some of that stuff used to be. It's probably still very, very intense. I'm not saying that she didn't deserve it, but there's a few times when she changes for like a few seconds, and I think like, how long did that poor makeup artist do all that stuff? And they're like, all right, we got the 5 seconds we need, we can call it for the day. It's like, what?
Yeah, whatever, they're getting paid.
That's true, that's very true. But yeah, I'm just not sure, with this, it just seems very weird, because you see in the trailers her kind of barking orders at the X-Men, and it's very odd because Mystique really isn't that character, I don't think. Maybe she has been at times.
Well, so now this is earlier on in the later movies when Magneto's older, Ian McKellen, right?
Yep.
And Mystique is on his side. Mm-hmm. What transpires to make her switch sides in the future? And stupid timeline crap. I hate it. Anywho.
Well, they didn't plan it out, Joe. And at the beginning or at the end of First Class, she kind of takes Magneto's side. She says like mutant and proud. She kind of goes with that whole like, why should we have to hide? Which is funny because in every other movie she's just playing, she just looks like Jennifer Lawrence now for the most part. So she didn't really fall through with that. But it's weird because when you look back at the first X-Men, I believe it's that one where Mystique infiltrates the mansion as Bobby Drake as Iceman, and she poisons Cerebro. And it's like, why would you hurt Charles? Like, because in these other prequel movies, they show that they have like a big connection. Mm-hmm. So when in Days of Future Past, you hear like old Charles Xavier talking about his relationship with Mystique, you're like, you never mentioned once in all these movies that you were friends with like one of the enemies besides Magneto. Like Magneto's always been kind of like this, antagonist to Charles, but they've always had this great amount of mutual respect for one another and kind of this love. But Mystique, it's never been there. It's just kind of like when he sees her, there's just no words spoken. So It's very strange that they kind of shoehorned this in. A lot of that has to do with Jennifer Lawrence's ability to sell tickets, I think, Joe. Just like the whole Black Widow Hulk romance in Age of Ultron. Completely shoehorned in. It's just like, here you go. Like, we got to have something for her to do. So, but yeah, I don't know. That was another thing. I was kind of like, I don't know if we need to, kind of focus on that point much anymore. But again, James McAvoy, who plays Charles Xavier, and Michael Fassbender, who's playing Magneto, both fantastic. Especially Fassbender, I think, really hits it out of the park. That guy, like, he's doing such a good job of being like a young Magneto. I think, man, I just want that standalone. I know we don't need one. If I took like clips from each of these movies, I can make a Magneto standalone movie. But for right now, I'll have to suffice with what I get to see in these ones, which, you know, they don't disappoint on the Magneto home front. He even gets a funny line here and there, which is kind of nice to see from him, because there's this one moment, I won't spoil it for you, Joe, but he's about to take some revenge on some folks, and Apocalypse shows up, and he says something pretty great, and it's just like the perfect thing to say.
No, spoil it, man.
Scenario.
This is a spoiler reviewer podcast, isn't it?
Well, I want you to... He says something, you know, expletive, like, who the heck are you guys, basically, because they all show up, and they're all in their outfits, especially, like, Olivia Munn's, who's very... like, it's weird. All the other horsemen, even Storm, they don't look like anything... like. I mean, they look different, obviously, for 80s, but... even though Psylocke's look is very comic accurate, it looks very
risque.
I don't know. It's risque. Yeah, I guess it almost is very out of place compared to the other three. But it's just a funny thing that Magneto says to them, just kind of like, oh, who the heck are you guys? But he doesn't say it just like that. He gets his one F word in there for the show, which is because everyone stops and they all look, and like the whole crowd is just like with bated breath. It's like, what do you say to this? And it's like, oh, you probably say that.
Definitely sounds like I gotta see it. It sounds.
It's still a pretty good time.
Good, yeah, and I did see something Olivia Munn posted on social media. Something about she had to actually like lubricate herself into her suit. That's how tight
it's
it was.
really
And
tight.
it's like rubberized or something like that, like latex, I think.
There's a lot of like weird parts missing, Joe. Like I was looking at the comic like version of it, but there's like still like strips and stuff missing on sides. It's like it looks like she's wearing like a weird like plastic chastity belt.
So they may have simplified it just a little bit.
I think they probably could have not been so like ornate. Maybe that's the wrong word for it, but the thought behind all of this is that Apocalypse created these costumes for these individuals, and I just don't know what he was thinking being woken up after thousands of years, and he's like, you will be wearing this outfit. It's very like, well, wait, what?
Oh, maybe he thought she was hot, and he's like, I'm gonna put something small on you.
Unfortunately, too, Apocalypse doesn't really do a lot of stuff himself. It's mostly just kind of bolster everybody else's powers. He does have a few moments, but it's unfortunate. I would rather have seen him throw down a little bit more. But the only one, like I've talked about before, is that, you know, or maybe I haven't, but is that Magneto is kind of one of the few people who could probably stand up to him, in any way.
The thing about that is kind of crazy, and all his power is being able to control metal.
Yes, and it's not even just that. I mean, in the movies, they've talked about that. It's just like, they even say it's just supposed to be ferrous metal, but it's actually, he can do that. It can be any type of metal. He can... I think he could even make himself invisible. He can alter electromagnetic spectrum. He has like very minor amounts of telepathy, I guess, too.
Yeah.
He can make a shield around him that can like withstand a nuclear blast.
That's unreal. Like, all to do with magnetics, right? So.
Yeah, pretty much all of it does. And you can get a little more scientific than that and be like, wait a sec, like in the movies, he can do this, but he can't do this. But you know, if Magneto's coming at you, like, you, regardless of where you are, it doesn't matter. And in this movie, it's kind of cool because he gets his powers boosted up by Apocalypse, and he's able to kind of reach down into the earth and pull up, like, the iron and the cobalt and all this stuff and kind of make, like, a world-ending type event almost, because that's how powerful he becomes. And Magneto is just... he's just the best. I love that whole... I'm like, I want that power. If I couldn't have telekinesis, I'd settle for the Magneto stuff. Which kind of ties me in a little bit to the new cast that we kind of got with this one. We have Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Storm. Storm being kind of a bad guy for this one, but the other ones, they did a pretty good job. I was pretty excited because I want more. I want Cyclops to come back. I think they kind of he's just like a straight up boring Boy Scout in the old ones, and I think having a new Cyclops come back and Jean Grey and all that stuff to kind of go into it. And they did a pretty admirable job for these young actors.
Oh yeah, Jean Grey. They have her in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. She even gets a little Phoenix Force action kind of at one point, and I'm like, oh, I guess we're getting to the Dark Phoenix next. Sweet. Maybe.
Anything Wolverine featurette?
Maybe. Yeah, they definitely do have a. It's kind of weird, Joe. I won't lie to you. It's funny because like I knew it was coming, and the look they were going for with Wolverine is this Weapon X look where he's got kind of like these shorts on or whatever, his claws, and he's got like this computer helmet over his face. That's what they were kind of going for, but because Hugh Jackman is in here and they kind of need his face time, it's a different helmet and you can kind of see his face, so it doesn't, for me, it wasn't as cool because the old one, if you go look it up, it's kind of like this thing that covers his whole face. He's got like this like red eye or kind of cyclopsy looking eye on the helmet. Okay. And so you can't really see his face and he looks kind of like Predator-esque where he's just like no nonsense. There's no humanity left. He's just going to kill people. Mm-hmm. And he's going around and he's doing a good job slaughtering people, which is probably one of the first times in a long time that we've gotten to see him go kind of insane on some folks. But he goes up to a camera at one point that's like a security camera, and he like stabs the guy and he looks at it and he's like, "Arr!" And it's like, you know, kind of an older Hugh Jackman, you know. It's just kind of funny because it's just like, it seemed very forced, that little minute second. It's like you can tell, I don't know, it just seemed a little off. But when he was going around killing people, it was good to see, and hopefully we'll get a lot more of that when his next standalone, the last potential Wolverine film ever with Hugh Jackman, comes out, and it'll be rated R, so hopefully we'll get a lot of butchering scenes, if you will. Butchering. Because, yeah.
How would you like that cut, sir?
Exactly, because like he's stabbing people, he's doing stuff, but he's not like ripping off arms and stuff. He's not just, or they'll do it off screen where he kind of pins the guy on the ground and keeps stabbing into it. It's just like, all right, that's pretty cool. But it was really cool to see him. Unfortunately, he didn't stick around, and he has in the past been one of the Horsemen for Apocalypse. I think he plays Death from time to time, so Seriously? It would have been cool. I don't know what upping his powers do, Joe. Maybe he just heals before you can hurt him, kind of thing. Like you'd shoot him and like nothing would happen. He'd just be like, he pre-heals. That's pretty cheap. His claws go out to like 15 feet, and he sits in a lawn chair and he just dices you up. He's like, but yeah, it was cool to see him. I'm really hoping that next standalone is good. But
so how about Deadpool? Deadpool, was he in here?
No Deadpool, which is all right because they're, I like Deadpool, but I don't need to see him in everything.
Yeah,
and obviously
let's face it, I don't think it would be appropriate for one of these movies for Deadpool to break the... What's the wall that he breaks?
The fourth wall.
The fourth one. Yeah, the fourth wall. Yeah.
Well, plus this is the 80s, and I think Deadpool's more present day. So.
That's true. Yeah, he's not as old, right? So.
Unless they did like a time traveling thing, which he does time travel a lot with Cable. So I guess he could have popped up at the end and been like, "Hey, like where the hell are we?" And they're like, "Oh gosh, what's Deadpool doing here?" And they'd be like, "Who's that guy?" And he'd be like, "Hey, it's the X-Men," or whatever. But yeah, there was that. I'm trying to think of anybody else in the movie that you're kind of interested in hearing about, because I mean, Storm is kind of weird. She's like Egyptian, which is strange because obviously Egypt is in Africa, but typically Storm isn't Egyptian, and she has this kind of accent, and it's a little jarring at first because you're like, okay, what? Like they just tied it in because like Apocalypse wakes up and he has to meet someone right away. But it's
everybody always thinks of Halle Berry, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I know for a while Halle Berry was saying like, if you want a Storm movie to happen, guys, like you have to ask, like you need to really go out of your way to push that. And I think there's a few factors holding it back. One of them being the fact that there isn't that fervor for it as much as something like potentially like a Mystique or even as Black Widow is for now.
Yeah.
And also the fact that Catwoman, obviously a DC thing, but did so poorly and was so hated that I wonder if they would ever, not that it was Halle Berry's fault at all, but I wonder if, the people at Fox were just like, ugh, we don't want to take a chance on that. Because for a long time, what they were going to do is they were going to do X-Men Origins Wolverine, which they did. They were going to do X-Men Origins Storm, and they were going to do X-Men Origins Magneto, which I was really excited
Storm.
about the last
Whatever,
one.
She can control the weather. I don't give a crap. It's raining out right now. Who cares?
Thank you, Joe. I always thought that power... That power would be sweet if you're like a kid, because you'd be like, it's a snow day every day.
Yeah, screw the school thing. Snow
day. I iced up all the buses. But yeah, I think of Halle Berry as well. But this young actor did a very good job. I thought she was very good. Like I said, the accent's a little weird, and being a souped up Storm, it didn't really feel like a lot of the powers she was exhibiting were like over the top. They weren't any bigger than the stuff we've seen older Storm do, which I guess would maybe make sense. Like older Storm kind of learned, to be as powerful as like a young Storm souped up. But the lightning effects, it was kind of weird because like when they're blowing up on the ground, maybe when you see it, Joe, like the practical like explosions and stuff, they seemed a little off to me. I don't know what it was. I don't know. It's just kind of strange because everyone was fighting Beast. It was like Storm and Psylocke against Beast for a bit. She does kind of do some whirlwind tactics with some cars, and it's like, that's fine. It just, X-Men fights are really kind of slimmed down compared to some of the Marvel like cinematic universe stuff, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of strange to see that, especially after Civil War, even with their intimate fights being so intense. Like these ones, they don't feel like anything. I think I think again it was like Mr. Sunday Movies who said this, like, you know, you see like cities get destroyed, but how many movies do we see cities get destroyed in now? It's not that big of a deal. But then when you watch Civil War, like Crossbones blows himself up and Scarlet Witch tries to save, you know, Cap from it and blows up like a part of a building, and you're like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. But then the implications of it, like with this, oh, there's some like Wakandan you know, folks there who were just coming, there was some visitors or whatever, and they died, and that kind of set off this whole thing of like accountability. And it's like, that's a way bigger deal than just like, oh yep, another city is getting destroyed right now. That's a big deal. Like how many like summer blockbusters have we seen just get entire cities just get blown up? You're just like, whatever, you don't feel anything.
Well,
it's just not very intimate.
And it's cool too if they can actually show the loss besides structure. You know,
yes,
human,
like the families and stuff.
Yeah, human, and you know, make you really feel the impact of what just happened. Besides buildings and, you know, man-made structures, you know, that hits it home a little better, and you feel a deeper impact via that.
Yeah,
so.
And retroactively, I think Civil War did that with Ultron. It's like the whole like, there's a lot of people who died in Sokovia after the events of Age of Ultron, and they touch on that. But the X-Men movies, they're like, oh, remember that one time that like, you know, Magneto picked up an entire stadium and like dropped it around the White House. He might not have killed a ton of people, but like he probably killed some people by when he did that. You know what I mean? Like,
would think some people died.
The loss of life that Magneto's probably caused is in the thousands at least. But that's okay because Magneto doesn't care, and that's the thing about him. It'd be better if they like confronted Magneto and been like, "You've killed so many. How are you going to answer for that?" And he'd be like, "I'll just kill you too if you get in my way." Like, like he wouldn't care about that. He'd be like, "You're just all humans to me. You're not Homo superior," as he likes to call the mutants. So, yeah. But anyway, if you're interested in seeing,
it's kind of like Hitler-esque, isn't it?
That's a good point, Joe.
It is a little bit. Point. It's like, you're not blonde hair and blue eyed, so I don't care about you. Die.
That's true, and I think maybe they kind of stepped away from that in these movies a little bit, where he's just like, okay, I'll try to live with the humans, and like in the beginning of this movie, he's made his own life with the humans, and he tells Charles, he's like, I tried to do it your way, Charles. I've tried to do it a bunch. It's just every time I try to, they find out about me, and then they come and kind of ruin my life. The humans come and ruin my life. And you're right. I guess he hasn't like completely, he hasn't done it yet, where he's like, I'm just going to kill every human. I mean, in the X2, he basically gets Charles Xavier to almost kill every human, which is actually pretty interesting. But I know in the comics and stuff, he ends up like making an island, like kind of like a safe haven for mutants to like Genosha. I think, is it Genosha or something like that? But he goes and he's like, you know, screw it. I'm just going to go make my own place, my own utopia where we can all live, you know, peacefully, and no one's going to ever come mess with us because I'm here. So I would love to see that kind of stuff crop up in the future X-Men films if Fassbender's around and up for it, because that's where it gets interesting. He's not really interested in killing every person, but he would if he could.
Yeah, well, so
if he wanted to.
Do you think it ever comes to a head where he realizes, okay, I was in a Jewish, you know, entrainment camp and, you know, under persecution by the Germans and all that, whatever. Does you ever think it comes to a head and he realizes, I'm a hypocrite? I'm putting people in the same position that I was in when I was in that camp?
I don't know. I guess it would have to get to a point where he starts like enslaving people and like making them do work for him, I think would be the difference. Not saying that either case, like, he's ever completely justified in his actions.
Well,
but...
no, I mean, Hitler, they put him in those camps and they basically killed him. Yeah, maybe there was some work done, whatever, but that wasn't necessarily slavery. They were basically, they either starved to death or they were put in gas chambers and died, you know, killed.
Yeah.
So, you know, him killing, you know, regular humans, not mutants, and only mutants deserve to live. You know, basically, he's becoming a Hitler almost.
Yeah, I get that.
Sense.
I think, I think the difference is, like, he isn't going completely out of his way yet to do that.
Yeah.
I think if he crossed that line, it would. And I think also he's looking for equality, and there's been times where he wants it to just be like, all right, like, if you can recognize that I'm a powerful individual and you aren't gonna, like, ruin my life, because in this film he marries a human, like a regular person, and he's like, I told you what I was from night one, you gotta trust me. So he's clearly not opposed to, having relations and, talking to, humans at all.
Yeah.
I think he just looks down on them in a different way. I don't think it's like with Hitler, I think is a little more like he was more like envious and saying things like, I'm not perfect and the world isn't perfect, but I'm going to make it perfect. Whereas Magneto's like, I just want to be left alone. And if people just keep coming after me, it's like, come on, guys, I can't just turn it off, And I don't, in any case, especially if it's Magneto, like, why would you ever confront that guy? Even if you thought it was him, just like beyond a shadow of a doubt, just leave him alone. Like, if he's
aren't you like Magneto? Hey, can I get a picture for my Facebook? Hey.
Yeah, if you're a coworker with Magneto, and I don't understand this, like in superhero movies,
you're
like,
Magneto's boss.
Oh my gosh, it'd be
Magneto, I'm gonna need these reports on my desk by 8 tomorrow.
And he's like, what did you just call me? He'd be like, no, don't, I didn't call you anything. But I'd want to be friends with those types of people. And in the X-Men universe, like, mutants and in the comics, I think they're always hated, whereas superheroes who, obviously mutants can be, but for the most part, like Spider-Man, people don't know he's, like, got bitten or whatever, but they don't, like, go after Spidey and, like, oh, he's a freak, kill him or whatever, except for Jameson. But it's kind of interesting that the mutants are always persecuted against. But yeah, I don't know if Magneto. I understand your parallel there, Joe, for sure. But
you
I think
explained it well. There is a bit of a difference there, and he's not quite going out of his way and killing every human ever. And from what I hear in this movie, he kind of comes to his senses a bit, right?
Yeah, that's the problem with these movies, Joe, is that he's like a really intelligent guy typically, but he's so easily manipulated. Days of Future Past, he's such an idiot because they kind of tell him like, all right, if Mystique kills Bolivar Trask, they're going to make Sentinels. These Sentinels are basically going to wipe everybody out. And not just the mutants, every human ever, because those guys, the Sentinels, they make internment camps. But they say, like, all right, even if you don't have the mutant gene, you have the potential to create it down in your lineage. So you've got to be controlled. But instead, he's like still trying to kill this guy in the past. And they're like, they just told Magneto not to do that. In this one, it's a little bit more understandable why he does this, because it's just after his family gets attacked.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? This is the last straw. I don't care anymore. And Apocalypse shows up, and it's kind of like, oh, like, this guy can make me more powerful.
Of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of hope for the turn, and he kind of does it, but I was kind of hoping they'd do all this stuff, and then he would just straight up turn on Apocalypse and be like, actually, the whole, like, you being the leader thing isn't working out for me, like lop his head off or something, just be like, oh. But he does fight him, and it's pretty cool. I don't know, Magneto's so cool and empathetic and interesting, and I just think that I wish it was just more focused on him and Charles and the struggles that they both face, and where they come, clash together, which, they have in the older films, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I have to agree
definitely
with you. And I know you did a review on this, spoiler-free review, right? I did listen to that. Very well done, and I thought it was a good review and kind of gave me a little bit of insight as to whether I want to see this movie or not, or make the effort. And especially after listening to that and then our discussion now, I definitely want to go see it. I mean, they're good movies. They really are. And the X-Men franchise, how can you not like it? It's interesting to say the least. And Magneto, I share your thoughts there, man. He is, he's the top of the pyramid. He's pretty awesome, and it's easy to see why he's been the staple protagonist in the entire dealing. So
you mean antagonist?
Antagonist, sorry.
That's okay. I like that you said top of the pyramid.
Whatever, yeah.
Top of the pyramid because we're doing Apocalypse stuff, so it's Egyptian. But the other thing is too, I was talking to some people and they're saying I was kind of being easy on the movie. A lot of people have been kind of hard on it. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that maybe it's timing a little bit. You come out right after Batman vs Superman, and right before Civil War might have been a better spot for it.
Mm-hmm.
And people would have been like, oh, this movie's actually pretty good. But the fact that it kind of came after Civil War and people, like critics and everyone's been loving it, it's kind of a hard thing to follow.
Yeah, they're really, they've set their bar and it's very high. And so
Exactly.
it just opens it up to more criticism. So there's a lot of comparison going on there. So unfortunately,
Yeah, and a lot of people...
From what your review states, it sounds like it's still a very worthwhile movie and stands up to judgment. So.
Well, yeah, it's not fair because I am a pretty big fan of the X-Men.
Okay.
And, after this one, it just makes me wish that they could be in the same universe with everybody else.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because that's like, after this, people are, I'm thinking they're like, all right, just like get the rights back to him. We got to get Wolverine in there at least. But the thing I was going to say, Joe, if I can remember what it was, losing my train of thought. There's so many thoughts. But... I am a pretty big fan of these films, and the thing that the X-Men usually gets to do, and they didn't really play up so much in this one, is the kind of the themes of prejudice and segregation. Mm-hmm. And that's a kind of an interesting topic for superheroes to comment on. And they don't really get to do that at all. This is just kind of like your run-of-the-mill blockbuster, like destroy the world type of thing. It's not like thoughtful, whereas some of the other movies kind of get into that whole thing where it's like, oh man, like, First Class is like mutants being on the scene for the first time. And then Days of Future Past is like really a big commentary on like what would happen, like what's the slippery slope fallacy of what happens when we just go too crazy and we're too afraid of the unknown and we create an evil that's much worse than them, if you will, in the Sentinel program. These robots that don't care about murdering everybody if they fulfill their programming.
Yeah,
so,
well, and I think a lot of that goes back to, when these comics were being written, it was in a time in our history where, these served as almost a metaphor or where, there was a correlation between these and what was going on in our history at that time.
For sure.
So,
and it's still going on.
Yeah.
It's the X-Men were, for anyone who doesn't know, and I didn't completely know this, but it makes sense, is that the kind of underlying truth behind them is that they are a metaphor for gay rights. And
oh, really? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and it's kind of the persecution of them, being just a little different, and obviously in the not Magneto's case, but maybe Magneto's case, but very different, obviously, superpower wise, and it's a cool thing, to think about that because it just kind of makes it seem more of not realistic, but more compelling, maybe.
Yeah, well, and what time period did the X-Men come on the scene, I guess?
Oh, man.
Marvel?
It's, okay, the weird thing is, Joe, I think they came out, it's like the same month they debuted as, like, the Avengers. I don't know when, what year that was. 70s? 60s?
Was it the 70s, 60s? Okay.
I don't know. I have to fact check it. But that kind of, and I'm pretty sure that's what it is, because I used to think it was more like, and it might be also married with the idea of, African American civil rights too, because
I guess
if you
that's
look
what
at
I was kind of thinking of. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
you.
Exactly. Well, you got Charles Xavier, who is basically your Malcolm or Dr. Martin Luther King,
Yep.
and then you've got Magneto, who's your Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Where you've got like the peaceful one who's like, I just want to, let's work it out. Let's just peaceful protest. Let's not do anything crazy. And then you got the other guy who's like, yeah, let's kill everybody. Everybody's gonna die.
Yeah. So in my mind, when I think back to history and when these kind of came on the scene, I think that's where I was. Getting the correlation, but I mean, yours stands up too. I mean, and it does serve as a metaphor for all, facts of life and things that go on throughout our history and, prejudice and segregation. And it's something that always seems to be there, unfortunately. And, there's a lot of correlation there. And you can see that in other Marvel characters as well, I think. But yeah, X-Men, absolutely. So,
yeah, and I also want to say this too. I don't think necessarily Malcolm X wanted to kill everybody. He was just more aggressive.
Yeah,
they people are gonna be like,
"Come on,
Jimmy, what's wrong with you?"
Obviously, it's a little different.
Just so you know, Joe, 1963.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Holy Cafoli, we're coming up on 60 years of X-Men. That's pretty impressive. But it just after watching this, and I'm a pretty big X-Men fan. I've always liked them. I like that they're kind of slimmed down versions of a lot of other superheroes when you compare them to something like the Justice League. Like a lot of these guys only have one power, and they use it well.
Yeah.
Whereas like in that, or even Avengers to some degree, where they have like just a myriad of abilities, and you're like, oh, this is Cyclops. Like he can shoot optic like blasts out of his his eyes, and he can fight pretty well, and he's a good leader. And it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's a nice change of pace as opposed to like, well, Superman can do that, but he's also indestructible. He can fly. He can destroy you basically with anything. Yeah. He can breathe cold air out of his mouth. Like you're like, oh, I just get.
They're more souped up, and where X-Men, it's a little more grounded and natural and kind of scientific based. Their mutants, genetics, and all that. I like that too. So there's definitely appeal there, but.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like I said before, if or in my review, if you're a Rabid fan, obviously it's a no-brainer. You're probably going to see it or already have seen it. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the movie, because I thought it was pretty good. Also, I want to mention one more thing. The opening is excellent. I wish we had more of it. It starts off in ancient Egypt, and there's a lot of cool stuff going down there, and it's just like I kind of wanted to stay there a little bit longer before they took us out of it. It's really an interesting intro. It's like, wow, this is going to be something different, because X-Men, typically they'll just like, it's either more present day, or they kind of flip between the future a little bit and the past, and kind of like a period piece. But this is like ancient history, and you're like, whoa, like something's going down. Like it's pretty fascinating. So yeah, we'll see where it goes in the next one. I'm not sure if they're gonna go Dark Phoenix Saga again. They might do Onslaught, which we could talk about sometime, but I'm not sure. I've heard it's gonna go to the 90s, and I also heard rumors that Jennifer Lawrence, Nicholas Hoult, who plays Beast, Fassbender, and McAvoy, said that they kind of made a pact together saying that they'd all come back to do it again if everyone else is interested, but if even one of them didn't, they wouldn't. So I'm thinking, like, if Jennifer Lawrence is kind of hesitant to come back to this, I don't know if anyone would, but I feel like Fassbender and McAvoy would probably get a pretty sweet paycheck if they both came back. They'd be like, you should come back for a few movies, guys, because who are you going to find who's playing Magneto? Who else are you going to find? I mean, I'd do it, but it wouldn't be as good. I'm not old enough.
You'd stand a chance. You give her hell, kid.
You sound echoey, Joe. What, are you in a well? You're sitting back, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Joe's taking a nap over there.
My back was starting to hurt, all that sitting up straight, but...
I'm putting Joe to sleep over there with my X-Men talk.
Well, no, I said, you'd stand a good chance. You'd give her hell, kid.
I want Magneto power so bad, Joe. But you should definitely see this, and we can talk about it soon. Maybe
definitely, yeah. Maybe we can bring it up in another podcast in the future after I see it, just a little more detail on it. Because I know I'll enjoy it, one way or another. So
be critical, Joe, and look for the CGI Olivia Munn.
Oh, you know me. I notice those finite details, my friend.
You'll be just staring at Olivia Munn the whole time, even when there's like scenes with like she's not the focal
distracted. Point. They could have freaking squirrels dancing, the river dance in the lower left corner while Olivia Munn's up on the right side. I better stop while I'm ahead.
Oh my gosh. So good.
Anywho, good stuff. So, people need to check out your review if they haven't seen it, and go check it out. But...
Yeah, definitely. Well, Joe, we're moving into the last segment of the show here. And I forget, what is it called, Joe?
Time Killers.
That's pretty good. Look at that. Joe did it first time. So Time Killers, for anybody who doesn't know, it's just kind of like what we're, into right now. Any movies we've just seen or are going to see, video games we've been playing, TV shows we've been watching. So Joe, besides X-Men, which you're going to see, and kind of besides Overwatch, like some of the head off of the pass.
Oh, what's Overwatch?
What's Overwatch? It's just a little game by Blizzard. It's an indie game. Like 5 people are playing it.
Yeah, not much attention there. What have I been up to? What's on my forefront here that I've been into lately?
If it is Overwatch, Joe, please describe one character that you've been loving and playing that you haven't really thought of before as someone you've loved, or someone you've fallen in love with more.
As of recently, Overwatch has been, as much of that game as I can play, the better. In fact, I hope you and I can hop on there in a bit here. As of recently, I never gave him much attention. I always was more of a Mei or a Junkrat or even a Reaper. But I've been really enjoying playing tank is Roadhog.
Oh yeah,
Roadhog in the tank role. I've been having a lot of fun. He's big, he's burly, he's an easy target, but man, I've been able to, take some people out, step behind some cover, re-up my health, head back out there, and it's been all about that hook accuracy for me, man. Pulling them in and shooting their heads off, and I'm shooting for the highest percentage of hook accuracy possible. I gotta get that 100% in one of these matches,
I know. I keep doing that too. It's like I make some good grabs, and then I'm like, I don't want to grab. I don't want to do any more hook. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be trying to hook people in, but at the same time, I'm like, what if I just finish this match with like 4 good hooks, and that's it? Like I'm just like
100%,
all right,
baby.
100%, baby.
Just get one good one and call it.
They're not even on the board. They don't even show you. They're like, if you don't try, we're not giving you this percentage.
Yeah, they
at the
probably
end.
wouldn't. But needless to say, obviously that's been on my brain as of late. But the things I've been watching, it's a little more of a thinker and not super fast paced, but it's real interesting. Is a Netflix series, Bloodline, based in the Florida Keys.
Oh, yeah.
It's got one of the lead actors is from the Friday Night Lights TV show. He played the coach on that show. He's in here. Some other good characters as well, and I can tell it's kind of like a building show. Like they kind of give you glimpses into the future that you don't understand, and they're building up to it, and you can tell that things are about to kind of break loose at the seams. And definitely an interesting show, and I encourage people to check it out. So that's what's on my plate right now. So
fair enough. I thought you were gonna say by building show, it was just like a camera that's slowly panning through a building. Like, here are the steps.
Yeah,
and like season
it's
2
all
is like
about
the
construction.
3rd floor.
So they start at the foundations, and they have to bend up the rebar and pour the concrete footings.
It's like one of those Discovery shows where like that actor from Friday Night Lights is walking around. He's like, all right, I'm going to take you through the entire process of actually making a building.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, Joe would be like the one viewer. He's like, this is beautiful. He's like, you got to lay a foundation. You want a solid foundation because of...
It all starts with the financials. You got to get good bids. Good subcontractors.
Creaking my chair, yeah. No,
all right.
If you don't have a good foundation...
so anyway,
I hate myself.
Back to the
Bloodline.
Time Killers. What's on your plate, Jimmy? What you got?
Oh my goodness. So obviously Overwatch. McCree's been overpowered lately, so I played a few games with him to try him out. I still don't really... I don't know how I feel about him.
Speaking about McCree, I've played him once throughout an entire match, and I didn't do too bad. I had a good amount of eliminations, but I also died kind of often. I'm not as good with him as other people are. I think it has something to do with my button layout, my mapping. I feel like if I could change where that stun grenade is and stuff, I could do better with him. Yeah, I just haven't taken the time to do it, but
yeah, I don't know. I've played against other McCrees who are much better than me, and they've proven it, and I'm just like, all right, well, I'm not a good McCree right now. I guess I could keep learning, but I think they'll probably nerf the stun that he has on his flashbang pretty soon.
Pisses me off.
But yeah, it's ridiculous. I've really been loving Reaper lately, all about positioning.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to think of somebody new that I haven't. I too have been really loving Roadhog. He's so great. I love him so much. He's a weird tank because he's very self-centered. He doesn't really have anything to help anybody else, which is kind of strange.
True.
So
one I want to try out that's on my list, and I think I've played with once during the beta, and only for like a half a match. D.Va. I want to try D.Va out.
Oh yeah, D.Va's good. I've been trying to get into D.Va, a little bit of Zarya, but D.Va too. What I've learned with her, Joe, is like, yeah, man, she's so good at just like you get into a place, do some stuff, and then just kind of run away and then come back. Just because she's got that mobility with her jet boosters and stuff. And don't forget to use her defense matrix. That thing is real good. I don't know, man. I'm trying to think. I think that's everybody I'm trying to find somebody in every tree, and I'm trying to get everybody else to do so too. And I'm hoping that they add some more to support, because there's only 4 of them right now. I've been playing a lot of Lucio. And he's fine. He's just kind of boring to me, just because it's just like I just kind of skate around and shoot stuff. And it's fine.
I do like the fact that you always have his weapon up. You can always at least shoot, and I enjoy that. And you can do that one real big burst where it kind of shoots them back or away.
And that's great for environmental kills, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've tried like Genji a little bit and Hanzo. Those are both high skill level. And actually, I went 8-1 today with Widowmaker. I just played a game with her, and I was just like, I was having a good time with her. I was just like sitting in the back getting in sniper fights, and I was getting better about just like kind of following my target and then just trying to hit like a good headshot real quick.
And she's more versatile than people make her out to be. I find that you're sniping, all of a sudden you see a guy coming from your right side or from behind you. You're 7 o'clock. Spin around, assault rifle. You still stand a chance in close quarters, which I love. But needless to say, all this talk about Overwatch, I'm giddy and all ready to get after it. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll get right to it. I just want to say if Sombra comes out and she might be a support who's like a sniper.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get good with sniping because if I play like a lot of support because no one else wants to.
I try. I do once in a while.
You liar. No, just kidding.
I like my Zenyatta.
Well, no, he's lying, guys, to you right now. What he does, we get to a map, doesn't matter what it was, we'll grab Junkrat and be like, all right, let's go. And be like, all right, I guess we're doing Junkrats, and then I think everyone should be Junkrat then. No, no, it's not his fault. I think the problem with the game right now is that not a lot of people want to be tanks or supports because they're not like flashy, cool killing roles typically. Zenyatta is probably the best case example of a killing support because that guy, his damage, I got like out-sniped when I was playing earlier today, and he was just like shooting his little orbs at me. I'm like, man, that guy's just like with his Discord orb, he just damages the crap out of you.
Some people are really good with him, and it's annoying.
Oh, we were fighting those 2 last night, remember, Joe? And it was just like impossible.
It's unreal.
It was like, oh, well, great.
But however, I love tank. I love playing tank.
Well, I love you as tank because also your Winston play is pretty good. I've been playing a little bit of Winston too. He's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
I like Winston.
He grows on people, I feel.
Yeah, Cecil Cannon's weird at first, but once you get close to those squishies, like some of those people you can't out-duel with other offensive characters, and you just kind of run up next to them, just hold down the trigger, and you're just like, I'm going to kill you. And they're just like, I can't get away, like a Tracer. Like, I'm going to get you.
You don't have to worry so much about the aiming. You don't have to be exact with it, so that's good.
Which is nice. But besides that game, I just watched the first episode of Samurai Flamenco, which is just like an anime on Netflix. That's pretty good. I finished All Noah Zero a few weeks back, and Your Lie in April, which I want Joe to watch. He's not really into anime, but it's like 22 episodes long. It's about teenagers in Japan. It's emotional. It's heartbreaking. It's funny. It's great. It's so good. It's like
sounds depressing.
It does get a little bit depressing, Joe, but it's good because it makes you feel things.
Gives you the feels,
Gives you the. It hits me right in the heart when I think about it. But yeah, besides that though, I don't know. Just X-Men. Just saw that, and I'm excited to see these a few movies coming up. The next big movie I'll probably do a review for, just a little like kind of look into the future here, is Warcraft is coming out, I believe, June 10th, and I will probably be reviewing that one.
Really?
It unfortunately is not. They're saying it probably won't top the charts that weekend, which is kind of sad because I don't know if it's going to have a lot of competition. I think a lot of it just is because it's a video game movie and maybe a lot of people aren't interested in seeing that. I mean, I am because I think Blizzard, who obviously they made Overwatch and they're doing this movie. It's along with Legendary, I think, and Universal or something. But I think it'll still be good. The orcs look amazing, and we'll see how it goes. I'm cautiously optimistic for it. But besides that, Angry Birds and Assassin's Creed, which are all video game movies, hopefully all of them do well enough because there's so many good video games out there that could make good movies, but we haven't gotten them.
Assassin's Creed for sure. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, that one is gonna be sweet. But like we've had Hitman and we had like Tomb Raider a long time ago, it was fine, but just like the Mario Brothers movie is so bad.
Did Tomb Raider come first, the movie, or was it the video?
No. The video game first,
wow,
I believe.
Cool.
Yeah. And then Angelina Jolie was a pretty good choice for that. But I think with the new Tomb Raider stuff, if they do a movie with it, which I think they might be, I forget who's going to play that character. I know Daisy Ridley was in talks for a little bit, who plays Rey from Force Awakens, but kind of picking an actor that isn't necessarily like a supermodel, like kind of Angelina Jolie, that kind of look. Not saying the supermodels are very like horribly pretty because I don't usually think they are, but it always seemed weird that like someone who's got like this perfect bone structure and all this stuff is like out there just like fighting 30 or 40 men, and it's just like even a male model I wouldn't think could do that.
Hold on, Jimmy. I was just gonna say they should do a male Tomb Raider.
Oh gosh,
I'll do it for cheap, cheap.
I just like more of a realistic character who'd want to do that type of stuff. So hopefully they get that. And we're seeing more and more of that. One of the, we were talking about her earlier, but Jennifer Lawrence is your excellent she's a very good actor. And she's very pretty, I think, but she isn't, you know what maybe comes to mind? She's more of like a girl next door, which I really like because I think she's more realistic that way. She's like an actual human being as opposed to some of those people who you're like, that person's like 90% plastic by this point. Am I right? Like, can we confirm that? Can we get like a little test?
Yeah, they seem a little more untouchable. Oh, that sounds weird.
I know what you meant. I honestly did, and I didn't think about it that way until you said it got weird there. That's not what he means. That means that you couldn't relate with them. If you sat down across the table from like an Angelina Jolie, there probably isn't a lot you could chat about. She might not be, but she might be. I don't know. I've never met her. If you've met Angelina Jolie, let me know in the comments down below.
Yeah, but Jennifer Lawrence, she does strike me as intelligent. Sitting across the table from her might be a little intimidating, but you're right. She does have that bit more of a girl next door appeal, which is in no way a downplay to her. I think it's actually a compliment. I admire that in women, but
I think she'd be a lot of fun actually if you sat down for a meal with her. I think it'd be a good time. You'd be laughing a lot, and she'd be kind of inquisitive about your life, and I don't think she would look down at you at all. Is the thing?
Yeah, a little really more grounded personality, maybe. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But that is the show for today. Thank you everybody for.
Oh, hold on, Jimmy. Sorry to interrupt you.
He always does.
That does it for our segment of Time Killers.
How did I forget that I say Time Killers twice? Oh, wait, I remember, because I never say it twice.
How many times
but that was
did
good.
I
I kind of like that you ended it.
I just enjoy saying it. I'm gonna make it better. I'll perfect it. I promise.
Good. Well, that's good, because it helps my voice, especially like tonight when I've done probably a lion's share of the chatting. And if I throw that on at the end, I'm just like, but... Yes, thank you to Joran Evers for this cool picture you have right here. And thank you to This Is Daleb for the cool intro-outro music. And thank you to all of you for stopping by. Please do leave your comments, your questions, your feedback. Do all that stuff on the bottom. We want to know what you think about, Star Wars Rogue One, Thor, Hulk, X-Men Apocalypse, all that stuff. And if you have questions, like I said before, and we've talked about this in the past, please, we implore you, tweet at us, or send us them because we want to hear them. We would love to answer them. I really want to do a segment where it's your questions, even if it's something trivial. If it's like, what's your favorite ice cream? Spoiler alert, probably cotton candy. I like cookies and cream, though. Joe, how about you?
What are you looking for? My Twitch or my Twitter and my...
No, I'm asking you what your favorite ice cream is, Joe.
What's ice... Oh, ice cream. Oh. What? Dude, come on.
See what I have to deal with, guys?
You're my best friend. You should know this.
Rocky Road.
It's over.
No, it's mint chocolate chip.
Oh! And he gets it.
There we go. Got another good scream out of there. Yes, I was gonna, and we're getting to that now. But if you do have a question, you want to ask us directly, like right away on Twitter, you can find me at GoCritical. The same for Instagram, and if you want to follow me over on Twitch, it's Jimmy_good. And if you're feeling real generous, we have a PayPal account over there. Every dollar helps. We appreciate that. Obviously, your time is the most precious to us, but I just want to throw that out there, self-promotion and all that. And we are on SoundCloud now. I actually set up an account today.
Nice.
Hopefully, it'll be on iTunes soon enough. But Joe, if they want to follow you on Twitter, where would they find you?
You can tweet at me at lever_627. Then that's lever, just like beaver, only with an L. Go ahead and laugh. And then Instagram, I believe, Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm at leverj627.
I usually just put your Twitter handle, but I assume people can figure it out.
Yeah.
They'll hunt you down. That reminds me too, Joran Evers, the guy who did the picture for this, he has some excellent stuff on ArtStation that is linked down below. But there is an Instagram account that he's been putting stuff up for recently, and it is stellar stuff. Like, it's real good. Like, he's thinking about potentially maybe doing like a comic book thing or something, like a medieval style thing. It's excellent. I implore you to hunt him down over there. And I think if you can't find it like that, just look him up on Twitter, because he's a friend of mine there. It's like Joran backwards. It's like Niraj38 or something. But you can find him there, and it's really good stuff. So go check his stuff out, because he is amazing. Joran, you are amazing. I'm just going to keep saying that because I really want him to like listen to all these like in rapid succession, and he's like, wow, they said a lot of good things about me. It's like, yes, you are loved. Anyway, Joe, I think that does it. Is there anything else you want to say to everybody before we sign off here?
No, I don't have much more to add. We got not much to go on this time, but we filled her up.
We always do. We always have a good time. Well, thanks again so much, everybody. And I know we tried doing this like in the very first episode, maybe even the second one, but we're trying to do like a little sign off here. But here's my sign off for now: is adapt and overcome. Take it easy, everybody.
Ciao. Peace.